You can just imagine Keir Starmer's expression when he was told about President Trump's latest social media message denouncing his deal to hand the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. It was probably one of shock, frustration, anger, all those things. This is the last thing that Keir Starmer needs. Why is it happening now? Well, one of the great trends that we're seeing is that whenever Donald Trump realizes that power is shifting away from somebody, he doesn't feel beholden to anyone in the first place, but especially not when they look weak. And if he sees the British Prime Minister as a lame duck PM who won't be in the post much longer, he will have absolutely no inclination not to humiliate him in the way that's just happened. The second reason is that Washington is always fighting its own internal battles. There was a profile recently of the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, which said that he spent, I think, about 20 minutes a week thinking about Europe. For all the talk about the special relationship, we are not at the forefront of anyone's minds in the White House, the Pentagon, the State Department, anywhere else. What they are worried about is their own national security. And if reports are true that there is serious consideration of a military strike against Iran, the last thing the US wants to be doing is sending out the message to its adversaries that it may be in a weakened position. It needs to be able to show that it is not going to be losing its grip on what it considers a vital territory.
As you know, the Chagosians were brutally evicted from the islands over 50 years ago. And what happened yesterday was a group of 4 of them, and remember, these are British passport holders going on to British territory, went back to start to build a permanent settlement and to rebuild their lives. There are a further 300 Chagosians living in the United Kingdom ready to go at a moment's notice once the settlement is viable. They were this morning served an eviction notice on behalf of the British government and told that unless they comply, they could face up to 3 years in prison. Just think that through. You can cross the English Channel in a dinghy, dispose of your passport and iPhone at the 12-mile line, and we will put you up in a hotel, give you 3 meals a day, dental care and medical care. And your chances ever of being evicted are less than 2%. And indeed, even on Diego Garcia, illegal immigrants arrived on Diego Garcia some years ago, and they were looked after, houses were built for them, schools were built, and yet this attempt by a group of people to reclaim their birthright, their rights of national self-determination, are being thwarted or threatened by the British government this morning. What about their human rights, Lord Hermer? What about them? What about their right to a family life? We are looking right now at every possible legal avenue we can to support these people and their brave quest to rebuild their lives as Chagosians. Thought I'd get that out of the way because I know the news channels wanted a comment on it. Now, as I say, today is the first rollout, and it'll be Robert Jenrick, our Shadow Chancellor. You can expect all of the others to come out and do their press conferences and set out their terms over the course of the next 2 weeks. If anyone doubts it, we're serious, we mean business, we intend to win the next general election. It's as simple as that.
There's also the internal battles. You remember how, in the first term especially, President Trump regularly blasted what he called the deep state. Well, there's all those people down at what they call Foggy Bottom, wonderful name, which is where the State Department has its traditional base. Now, they are going to be filled with the traditional concerns that career diplomats will feel about international law, all those things that the Trump White House doesn't venerate in the same way at all. They are going to be locked in discussions and internal rows. And here is Trump decisively saying, look, forget about what the lawyers are saying. This is our national interests. We're taking the long view and we're not moving. This is especially at a time, of course, when the US and the Trump administration is hawkish about the rise of China. And there's lots of people saying, for pity's sake, don't weaken your position there. But the other great trend is that Trump realises that this is an issue on which there are huge divisions within the UK. It's not just that he's picking up the newspapers and hearing about the denunciations of the Chagos deal. He's actually got British politicians, both Conservatives and Reform, telling him this is a terrible deal. We hate it. We don't think it's necessary. And there's people who Trump is close to and his advisors and aides and friends are close to who are being heavily lobbied. And in those moments, he just looks at the situation and thinks, I can put a brake on this. And that seems to be what he's trying to do.
While the Prime Minister and, in fact, their various ministers travel the globe, it's pretty obvious that they all go around waving the white flag of surrender. They can sit there chuntering, but the British public can see exactly what's going on with this government. Weak people and giving away their money. Had the Prime Minister... So the Minister is chuntering about starting the negotiations. This deal is on him. It's on their government. It's on the Labour government and your lefty friends and your international law agreements. And perhaps he'd like to listen, because had the Prime Minister... You can sit there, absolutely do listen, because they may learn a few things today. Had the Prime Minister and his dear friend, the Attorney General, perhaps she'd like to contribute to the debate. She'd perhaps put her name in to even speak. Then I suggest she sits and listen. Had the Prime Minister and the Attorney General and the real Foreign Secretary, Jonathan Powell, and the current and former secretaries who are in former secretaries in name but only got their way, then the Mauritian flag would already be flying over the Chagos archipelago, and hundreds of millions of the 35 billion of taxpayers' money would already be in the coffers, lining the coffers of a foreign government. I will give way. Yeah.
The Chagosians were treated as itinerant workers in the 1960s, so they didn't get, at that point, the basic rights that other people on other parts of the old British Empire, British protectorates. So they were discriminated against, and they're being discriminated against again by giving the Mauritius the power to determine what goes on. The only solution to the central issue of this problem is not a survey that the House of Lords are doing in good faith. It is to have a referendum, which is being ruled out of order today for good reasons, in procedural terms, to give the Chagosians a say in a referendum of whether they want to return or not. Otherwise, it is all speculation. I don't think my honourable friend from the front bench answered the real point about why we shouldn't be taking notice of the United Nations Committee to End Anti-Discrimination, anti-racial discrimination. That's fundamental, because they go back to the 1960s decision and they see what happened then and what is being perpetuated now as racial discrimination.